This is one of those fantastic things you can't just hardly believe. Let me set the stage for you. It's for those of you who are politically minded, you know that Mississippi has, in the 2010 census, has a little over 2,800,000 people, and that our representation in Congress is based upon population. So
right.
We have 4 representatives. I tell my students, and 2 senators. So we have 6 people in Congress doing business for Mississippi. California has 55 people in Congress doing business for California.
That's telling of our population.
Yeah, population is everything. And we've lost population, and we originally had 6. And in the district next to the river that runs down through Clarksdale, there were 2 representatives. One of them was Frank Smith, and the other one was the infamous representative of Eastland, who was, just an icon in Mississippi politics. Well, they gerrymandered that district and removed one of them, or in the process of removing one of them. And Frank was a dear friend of the former tax assessor for Minnesota County, A.W. Bushelon, affectionately known as Bush. Incredible guy, and Frank had come from Washington to do a little campaigning. A.W. knew the territory, so they were on the campaign trail, and A.W. and his oldest son was carrying him back to Memphis International, which at that time was the old terminal off of Winchester. Been there many times, and there's a payphone right there. I know you probably don't know what a payphone is, but you actually put a quarter in there, and you could dial a local number.
So this was at Winchester.
The Winchester.
55 was open at that point?
55 was being constructed.
Okay, so Interstate 55 coming right through that, or the artery is coming right through that area.
And so they had a wonderful weekend after campaigning, and Congressman Smith says, A.W., is anything we could do for you? He said, yeah, because we could use a post office in Southaven. And he said, well,
and what did Southaven consist of at that point? Just
Southaven State Line Road, all over 51. That was it.
And there was a few small suburbs.
Just much like a lot of places are now, where you see subdivisions or developments have moved in where there were already existing houses.
Right.
People had moved out, built a house, and then it becomes kind of swallowed in that. Well, that's what it looked like before the rest of the houses were built. Eastland would win the election.
Okay.
And Smith, we would lose 2 congressional representatives. But back to the story. So they're on the way to the airport, and he asked, is there anything we could do for you? And he said, well, we could use a post office at Southaven. At that particular time, the mail was coming out of Whitehaven. Took a little bit longer than it probably should, and it was almost like a rural carrier,
right?
Where you used to have routes. I lived in Route 2, so and so. And he said, and one other thing, it would be really good to have an interchange at Southaven. Well, Congressman Smith says, well, it's just 2 miles down the road, you got Horn Lake. He said, yeah, that's Horn Lake. Southaven is going to be the center of the growth around here, I can tell you that. And A.W. was a very persuasive person, and so Frank had to call in. He went to the payphone, and A.W. and his son were in the car, and he could hear the conversation. And Frank said, well, I'll tell you what, Bobby, we need a post office in Southaven, Bobby. I mean, we need it badly, and there would be some conversation about that on the other end.
Is this Bobby, the Attorney General of the United States?
Bobby, the Attorney General of the United States, and so he got around to the interchange, and he said, Congressman Smith said, I know it has already been surveyed and plotted, and I know this. I know it's been on the book since '55. But listen, and the more they talked, the more adamant he got about it. And A.W. thought he was pulling a joke on him. He thought he was.
Like, there's no way this dude
No, he's not
is on the phone with Bobby Kennedy telling him,
No.
I want an interstate exchange right here in Southaven.
And he didn't know he just put it out of his mind until, I don't know, sometime later, 2 or 3 weeks later, he had a call from the fellow who owns the property there on the would be the northeast corner, and he wanted to know, who was a friend of his. He says, A.W., what are these people driving stakes in my backyard for? And the rest is history. It's there. So,
And this is at State Line Road?
it's State Line Road, where it is now, and
A phone call to Bobby Kennedy, and then 3 weeks later, they're out here surveying.
I mean, that quick. And obviously, the irony of it is that he lost the election. So, it was a hard-fought election, and it was Mississippi politics probably at its best. And
But one phone call
one phone call. That's all it took. And
was the spark for DeSoto County, honestly.
right.
Olive Branch would have existed at that point, but there was no, on this side of the county, there was not a whole lot going on, because Horn Lake was not really, that wasn't a city yet. That wouldn't be a city until the 80s, 70s.
No, Horn Lake, yeah, I think was incorporated sometime in the 70s, and but just weeks before this happened, they were interviewing people in Southaven about the possibility of incorporating it. And there's a fellow stood there on his front porch, and he said, I just can't see that ever happening, because you see, we're just who we are down here. There's no doctors or lawyers or attorneys around here. He could throw a rock at his neighbor who was an attorney, but apparently this caught everybody by surprise, and the interstate just punctuated the thing. I mean, it was gonna happen in no time at all. We had stores that we'd Schnucks, for instance, out of Chicago. Who would have thought that would have been Southaven, Mississippi? But it was, and I tell you what, it made an absolute fantastic place to raise family. It really was just incredible. A Norman Rockwell type of atmosphere. So, and that's how it happened.
And the story continues today, because the community of Lewisburg just got a massive 4-lane right through the middle of it.
Yeah, we did.
And everything's going to branch out down south once again.
Yeah, that's true. Somewhere there'll be a Dillard's and a Macy's and
Walmart.
Walmart.
It'll be Walmart.
Well, maybe the Walmart first. But